Hi.
Hi.
I'm Marguerite Gilbertson, the lecturer of Sculpture and Spatial Studies.
I'm Tony Veronese.
We're currently at the Sculpture Annex at Auburn University at Montgomery. And that's where Tony and I have been working on our sculptural piece for the Community Togetherness project for the museum. Today we're going to be talking about our work, so we'll be leading you through talking about some of my pieces, and then Tony's going to talk about some of his. And then at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about the project that's called Measured Space, as well as some of our experiments that we've been doing with it. So we're looking forward to sharing that with you.
And one of us will have the phone at all times, so if you have a question, just feel free to ask, and we'll ask the one who's being filmed.
Yeah, and we'll also spend some time at the end too. So if you have some questions, feel free to ask.
And thanks for joining.
Yeah, and thanks for joining us this morning. All right, so to get us started.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be talking about my most recent work. My body of work is largely about my experiences growing up on my family's farm, as well as stories about my family. This series is much more personal. It's the last 2 years we've been dealing with my father's diagnosis of colon cancer and how that has been affecting my family's farm. I grew up in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, so my dad was a cash crop farmer. He still is. He grows corn. And when I was visiting them, we had a lot of conversations about the future of the farm, my dad's life, what was meaningful to him. And through those conversations, this series came from me kind of processing mentally and emotionally. And I was thinking about their iconic red barn. What does that symbolize for a family farm? And the tradition that it has held over many years. And what I saw was this connected relationship between the barn and the farmer, so my dad, that in many ways their lives are connected because my dad spent the majority of his life maintaining this barn and upkeeping it. And barns over time, if they're not cared for, will degrade and fall apart. And so I saw this disease in many ways then affecting the life of this barn. And so I created these structures on the surface of it to act kind of like tumors and almost kind of like this growth growing around the barn and within it, similar to my dad as he's experiencing this in his life. What was interesting about this process as well was I had to work with my dad to build this installation, and there were some great conversations that we had as far as the meaning of the barn to him and what he wants to be remembered by in the end. And so that experience was very important to me. From this series, it led me to the second part where I was thinking more about the tumor forms. I wasn't really happy with how they looked necessarily on the structure of the barn. And so I started reflecting more on the conversations that I had with my mom while I was visiting. For her, while she's been coping with this difficult time period, she's been holding the items that bring her the most joy. And she's been very traditional all my life, has a lot of fine china, fancy tablecloths. And so I created these tumor forms from a lace tablecloth to kind of disguise these invisible forms. A tumor is not something we can see, and so I was kind of covering them up in this veil of materiality to kind of reference maybe some of those conversations I was having with my mother. I wanted them to look beautiful but also grotesque in a way, and this is an ongoing process for me as I'm thinking about the life of my family's farm, mortality, and these tough conversations I've had with my parents. So that's kind of where I'm at with this series at the time. As far as making these pieces, this is cloth that I dipped into like a fabric stiffener and then stretched it over a structure that I had made very similar to how I made the structures on the barn where I actually made the forms out of chicken wire and then took white sheets and then stretched those over them. I really wanted to capture the folds of the material. Particularly what I love about the lace is the shadows that it creates on the wall and how that kind of takes on a lovely element to the forms itself. I like the play between light and dark, as well as being able to see through these forms. And that's a little bit about this experience. I think we can transition then into talking about Tony's work.
Okay, there you are.
Yep.
I'm gonna hit these. Hi, I'm Tony Veronese. So I brought in two works. One is a painting called The Hunting Party, and then in kind of the vein of Local Artists Live, I wanted to bring what's currently on my easel and kind of talk about why I'm painting that and what's going on with it. So this is The Hunting Party. So a lot of my work, to put it simply, pokes fun at adolescence, my own suburban upbringing, and maybe like that weird period of between childhood and adolescence and masculinity becoming a situation that you have to navigate. So a few things visually that I deal with: boyhood, its connection to manhood. I also like to do a lot of examinations of the difference between painting and drawing and how they each kind of visually compete with each other or help each other. So a lot of the imagery for this piece came from family photographs of a camping trip, and it's meant to be more playful than anything else. I know that the work probably does have a little bit of a tone of otherwise, but yeah. It's mixed media and oil and canvas, so all of my paintings really go through a process of constant restructure. I do have an idea in mind, and I do have a plan in mind, but I want there to be, what I like about painting is that there is both a pictorial representation, but there's also like something physical that can occur on the surface, and so I like to find that point when I'm working to where my intent or what I thought the painting would be when I started kind of falls away, and the painting is going to become something else. So I call it the idea of serving the painting at a certain point and kind of relinquishing any kind of huge intent that I had. And that's why I brought this work. So this is currently on my easel now. It's unfinished, obviously, but a lot of, COVID's been a weird year, and I've kind of had to reevaluate what my studio time looks like. We all have. And so I was constantly searching for something to where if I only had 2 hours a day, or 2 hours every 3 days, or 2 hours every 4 days that week, to really sit down and paint, I wanted it to be a period where I was excited to do it. I didn't want it to be something that, I don't really want to work on this particular part of a painting or something like that. Or maybe I didn't really want to stress out about what I was going to talk about in terms of any kind of societal content. So I started collecting debris from my backyard because we just tore down a shed, and it ended up being kind of this weird time capsule of just papers and color and texture that's just kind of sat there and been exposed to the elements for about 20 years, I think now. So I started kind of arranging these haphazardly in collages. And the idea, though, was that at no point in time did I really feel like I had to narrow down what the final painting would look like. It was much more about presenting myself with kind of a puzzle in terms of color and balance and basic principles and organization and elements, and constantly kind of giving myself those 2 hours to kind of just have fun and solve things. And out of that, the painting kind of organically will constantly change and rewrite. And then when it's done, right? So I kind of want to talk about that because it's something that's come out of my COVID year It's come out of the necessity not to necessarily create a particular stance on anything, but just I wanted to reevaluate what it meant to experiment with painting in my studio.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to transition then into talking about our project for Measured Space, for the Community Togetherness project. So we're going to walk you over.
Setup.
Yeah. I love to 3D print, so I teach an intro to 3D printing course. And so I created a small maquette of our piece that we're going to show you, as well as a digital rendering that Tony did. And we'd like to talk to you a little bit about kind of our process for coming up with this sculptural proposal, what it represents to us. And so we'll go from there.
Sorry about that, bear with us. So this is a little maquette and the digital render of what we submitted back in November.
Mm-hmm.
November? Wow.
Yeah.
We're going to read our proposal explanation of the piece. So it's we'll each speak for about, I think, 45 seconds. I'll go ahead and start. So, Measured Space, what you're looking at is our kind of preparation for that and some of our initial idea. But the installation consists of a table and 2 chairs, and it's going to be made out of colored plexiglass acrylic sheets. It's inspired by months of separation. This piece is commenting on our experience during this pandemic. We've all suffered loss, whether that was a friend, a family member, a partner, or just life and time. We've all had to cancel plans or not visit the people we care about. The impact of this change, though, it really has not been marginalized, and it certainly has not been discriminating because it's a shared change. So for some, this pandemic gave more time to families to gather around their tables, while for others it meant not being able to gather at all. Measured Space is intended to elicit thoughts surrounding this idea of being together and memorialize the losses we've all shared. The table, as you can see here, is elongated to separate visitors and fill the distance of that space that we've all gotten used to. The chairs are pulled out to invite viewers to sit and experience the physical distance, but contemplate on this shared experience we've all gone through and perhaps talk.
Yeah. The table and chairs will be created out of plexiglass acrylic sheets, not only to pay homage to the importance of plexiglass as a material used through this pandemic, as seen in stores, face shields, and hospitals, but also because the transparency of the material gives a more ethereal presence. The virus itself was not something we could physically see, and the translucent quality of the plexiglass pays homage to that idea and perception. A table, in essence, is a place of communion. It is a place to share meals, to converse and discuss. We believe a table is a symbol of togetherness. By creating a table, it invites the viewer to actively participate in the sculpture through sitting. The table we create specifically separates 2 people to reference the 6 feet of social distance we have all had to put in place at the stores we shop at, in schools, and our ability to gather safely. It also leaves room for the viewer to contemplate and reflect on their own experiences they have had through this challenging time. It invites us to hold dear, once again, the notion of dialogue, understanding, and learning from one another. A table and chairs are just objects, flat and firm, yet their potential to alter the course of our narratives are well documented within ourselves.
And now, we would like to go on a journey outside. We'd like to show you our Mark I chair that we kind of finally feel confident about in terms of holding weight and the seamlessness of the sculpture. We have it viewed in place because it'll kind of mimic what you expect to see in terms of the surrounding space it'll be installed in. And yeah, so come on, we're ready?
Yeah,
go outside?
we can
Let's
go outside.
If you have any questions, still feel free to chime in at any time. It's a beautiful day outside.
It's very warm.
Chit chat.
Yes. this was the first chair that we've made. The original, or the design in the end is... Sorry about that. The connection was not great since we were too far away from the building. So we're going to back up so that we can show this chair to y'all.
Excuse the fingerprints now. Can you bring it inside?
Yeah. All right, this works. So, kind of like Tony and I were saying, this is the first chair that we've built to scale. It's going to be made out of blue transparent plexiglass, but the clear gives us a good idea of how we're thinking about seams, edges, also the overall construction of the piece as we've been working on this project, also to test out the weight. So thinking about, how much is this material going to be withstand, since it is going to be outside. It'll be in the sculpture garden at the Montgomery Museum of Fine Arts, and then later over near Biscuit Stadium.
The Riverwalk Stadium.
Yep. So, let me sit in.
Yeah, you want to sit in it? Just to prove live?
It is functional.
Yeah.
But the idea is to invite viewers to sit in it themselves, so that, when you're experiencing this distance between yourself and the other person at the end, you're thinking about this distance we've all shared during this time period.
I just want to zoom in and show there are no screws. It's all just fused seams. We wanted to keep it as clean as possible. We're pretty excited about the end product so far.
Yeah. No, it's been a great experience. Tony and I have really enjoyed working together on this, and we're really excited to share it with all of you. Speaking of which, we can then talk about upcoming dates.
Yes.
So y'all know when to go check this out. So there'll be an artist panel for the Community Togetherness project. That's going to include Chris Hardy and Nastasha Kelly, who are working on the mural. Also great artists, so
yes.
Please come and watch that panel. It's going to be Thursday, April 15th at 5:30 p.m. And you can view these works starting April 13th. So that's when you can check out our piece, and then I also believe the mural as well.
Yes, yeah. And I think Chris and Nastasha's, I think they're going to have a local artist live just like this. And that's next weekend, I believe. But check at Montgomery MFA for those details, obviously.
And then on June 28th, the sculpture is actually going to get moved, kind of like we were saying, to
Riverwalk Stadium.
Riverwalk Stadium, got it.
And it'll be there for the remainder of the summer.
And if you want to check out more of our work, you can find me at Marguerite Gilbertson 29.
And you can find me at Tony Veronese, just one word, on Instagram.
If there's any questions that y'all have, you can let us know about the project, about our work. Feel free to message us, and we can answer any questions that y'all might have. One thing, Tony and I, when we started working on this project,
we've been talking about working together.
Yeah, we had talked about working together already and putting some kind of series for an exhibition, and then COVID hit.
Yeah. Suddenly everything was virtual.
Right, and so we didn't have the opportunity to collaborate as much as we thought we would. So this project presented the perfect opportunity for us to work together. And we collaborate a lot already, with him teaching 2D design and I teach 3D design. So we love to talk about different projects we're doing in class, as well as our shared interests in our work. And that's kind of where it started. And we've really enjoyed collaborating on this idea.
I think, I remember we, to kind of go into the backstory, when the opportunity revealed itself, we got really excited. We were like, oh yeah, totally. We've needed a reason. We've needed an excuse to kind of maybe distract us from work and our own studio time. And so we we met up at the sculpture garden, I think, and we just walked around and looked at the space. And then we both just kind of literally ended up having a conversation, socially distanced 8 feet apart on those benches out in front of the main gate.
Yeah.
And I think just having that conversation, we were like, this is the piece.
Right.
The fact that, two people are having to stay socially distant but still exchange and share ideas. And there certainly was an overwhelming kind of, at least for me, and Marguerite, you can speak to this on your end as well, but like the idea of maybe a return to dialogue, I think was something that was really important for me to be in the piece and how it can be activated by the viewer.
Yeah, and I think that we both really wanted, especially, for me, when I think about how I'm building my sculptures, I really love that audience participation. I want my viewer to experience the work. The piece that they show, the Arch of Martha, Mama Kitty, and Chula, was very much about that. I wanted to allow my viewer to experience being part of the sculpture. And so I wanted to bring that into this piece. And Tony and I both felt that that was necessary when thinking about like COVID, where this idea of being together has been limited for so many families. And that's kind of where it started for us. I
think we went back and forth about material. I think that was the best. I think there was like a hot 2 hours where we were like, we're going to cast iron this thing.
Yes.
But it ended up being we just really wanted to cast iron something. So we started to think about material mattering, right? Which is something we both get on, preach to our students really every week. And I think we were both teaching separately across campus, and we had just earlier that day we had gone to Shakespeare and we had talked about what the piece could be, and then we found ourselves communicating through our plexiglass barriers, and we both kind of had this moment where later in the day we talked about how we both just realized, plexi, like that was it. That had to be the material. So the fun with that is that we ironically chose a material that is very much in need right now.
Right.
And so like with any project, you're presented with problems, and it's been fun though to navigate those as much as it can be.
Yeah.
But we're really pleased with the fact that we were able to get the materials we needed. We've had a lot of help in that way in terms of who to contact, and so thank you to all. I don't know.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, and I think what's interesting also about like the plexiglass specifically is, it might not have been something most people would have thought about as a high demand material up until the last
Not
year.
until January.
Right. Because it started being utilized so much, to, help healthcare workers, essential workers, people in storefronts. And so I think that my hope is that when you're experiencing this piece, you might reflect on some of those memories or thoughts or experiences, and just thinking about the importance of that material during this very difficult time for so many people. Let's see.
You want to open the floor to questions? Are there any questions that we've missed, maybe?
Yeah, I'll see if there's any questions that we got on here. Can everyone hear us okay? I noticed that some people said that maybe like the audio wasn't so great. We did have some slight connection issues when we tried going outside, which we apologize for that. But just let us know if you can hear us okay. We've enjoyed sharing our morning with you, going around talking about, getting the chance to talk about our work as well as this exciting sculptural piece we've been working on together.
And thank you to the Montgomery Museum of Fine Arts. Sincerely, this is a great opportunity and we're so excited.
Awesome. And good. It looks like the audio is fine, so great. Thank you for letting me know. I wasn't quite sure. But I'm really excited to show this work, and we both are.
Yes.
So it's been great talking with you. Stay tuned for more of these artists live. Like there's gonna be one next weekend, I think.
Yes.
You got a hi.
Hi,
Callie. So great chatting with you all. Stay tuned for more updates.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us.